Namaskar, and thank you for tuning in to the Economic Brief, our weekly program on key stories with an economic focus, which is both local and global. On the program, Sam Altman says India is poised to become a full-stack AI leader with talent, scale, and democratic values. Christine Lagarde warns that what once stabilized the global economy now exposes us to risk. Tariq Rahman, Bangladesh's new Prime Minister, faces urgent economic challenges amid inflation and youth job demands. And oil prices begin rising as the US-Iran tensions escalate. Well, speaking at the India AI Impact Summit in New Delhi, the OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, he said that sufficiently advanced AI systems would eventually outperform corporate executives and research scientists.
If we are right, by the end of 2028, more of the world's intellectual capacity could reside inside of data centers than outside of them. This is an extraordinary statement to make. And of course, we could be wrong. But I think it really bears serious consideration. A superintelligence, at some point on its development curve, would be capable of doing a better job being the CEO of a major company than any executive, certainly me, or doing better research than our best scientists. The vision that AI companies lay out fundamentally reduced to either unilateral control or decentralized power. Sharing control means accepting that some things are going to go wrong in exchange for not having one thing go mega wrong, cemented totalitarian control. This is a fundamental trade-off of democracy, and it is one that we believe in very strongly as the way to give everyone collective agency over the future. Of course, this is not to suggest that we won't need any regulation or safeguards. We obviously do urgently, like we have for other powerful technologies. In particular, we expect the world may need something like the IAEA for international coordination of AI, and especially for it to have the ability to rapidly respond to changing circumstances.
Well, and so Sam Altman also spoke about India, and he was quite bullish about India. In fact, he said that India is a full-stack AI leader and operates the entire. What is a full-stack AI leader? Well, a full-stack AI leader, in fact, is somebody who operates across the entire AI value chain. That is, from infrastructure, that is semiconductors, chips, compute, cloud, data centers, and the like. Then there is model development, which is transparency, which is training, training and capacity building. And then there is, of course, APIs, which are application processes, and then there is machine learning and the like. And then there is ethics, governance, and application. So that is the entire, AI stack. But India has all the ingredients to be a full-stack AI leader, and that is, it has the talent pool, it has adoption scale, and democratic values, which are very crucial, to making something where the freedoms of people are not impeded to a large extent. Let's move on to our next slide. Some of the advantages for India are that India has a large base of engineers and researchers, students, and OpenAI is, in fact, looking at India as its second largest market. In fact, India is the OpenAI second largest market with 100 million weekly ChatGPT users and the highest student user base. So OpenAI is bullish about investing in India. They're going to create data centers in collaboration with Indian corporates. Tata Consultancy Services is one of the main players involved. And when we understand what is the bigger picture in terms of policy support, we can see that government is closely supporting this ecosystem which is being created for AI. And the Prime Minister is leading from the front. India must be a creator of AI, not just a consumer. In fact, Prime Minister has talked about a human-centric ethical approach, a Manav approach, which is data sovereignty, transparency, and human-centric guidelines. The National AI Roadmap, then there's the data centers, cloud infrastructure, compute capacity. All this is being developed by India for India. Let's move on to our next slide. So it's not only Sam Altman who's speaking, positively about India. There is Amanda Brock, who's Open UK's head, and Amanda Brock says that India can lead in open source AI, but she says it largely because India stands at the center of this global advantage because India has, the developer community largely consists of a large Indian talent pool. So India is contributing to the development of AI to a large extent wherever Indians are. So open source ensures also equitable access to responsible innovation, and we can see that because it has made AI accessible to people, that has made it inclusive, there has been greater participation. Let's move on to our next slide. So we can see that India has received global recognition and continues to do so because India is seen as a global AI leader because it has the potential, the manpower, it has human capital, and it also has data. I mean, 1.4 billion people is not a small number of people for data. It's a huge amount of data that India can provide to the world. And innovation ecosystem as well. And India can shape then solutions for the world because the test cases of India can be replicated. As we can see in the Digital Public Infrastructure, the test cases that India produces in terms of UPI transactions can be replicated by other countries of the Global South. And that is a positive sort of a neighborhood effect, in a sense, on for this kind of growth model. Then there is also opportunities and challenges. Any technology disruption brings about challenges, but largely opportunities. India has talent, scale, policy, support, open source leadership. And then there is infrastructure gaps, which are being built, which are being bridged, I beg your pardon. And then there are compute costs, which are to India's advantage currently, because per capita it is much less. And then regulatory clarity, which is also coming clear because the leadership from the front is leading India's charge in terms of trying to democratize AI across sectors. So as we can see clearly that this is what the Indian policies makers have put in place. If we have another slide, we can go on to that. But otherwise, we'll move on to our next story. We'll move in and we'll talk about India's Electronics and IT Minister, Ashwini Vaishnav. He's announced a key outcome of the Indian AI Impact Summit, and that is the New Delhi Frontier AI Commitments. What he said is he's called this initiative, in fact, a significant milestone where frontier AI firms and domestic AI players, they have endorsed a shared set of voluntary principles, and these promote inclusive and collaborative AI development. Let's listen to what he's saying.
Today, leading frontier AI companies, along with India's own innovators, such as Sarvam, BharatGen, Gyani, and Socket, have come together to make a set of voluntary commitments that reflect a shared vision for inclusive and responsible AI. First, advancing understanding of real-world AI usage through anonymized and aggregated insights to support evidence-based policymaking on jobs, skills, and economic transformation. The second is strengthening multilingual and contextual evaluations of AI systems to ensure that AI works effectively across languages, cultures, and real-world use cases, especially in the Global South. Together, these efforts mark an important step towards shaping AI that is not only powerful, but also inclusive, development-oriented, and globally relevant. This initiative positions India at the forefront of building a global South-led perspective on AI governance, one that balances innovation with equity and real-world impact.
Well, our guest on the program is Subimal Bhattacharjee. He's a columnist and consultant who tracks technology affairs closely as well as international affairs. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhattacharjee. Now, how well placed is India, to set an example for the world in inclusive and democratizing AI?
I think Sam Altman has already answered your question, but just to come to the point, I think, the message of this whole AI Impact Summit has been terrific. You have seen how, the footfalls have been. You have seen the presence of so many global leaders. And most important, as Mr. Altman has also mentioned, the five-layer approach that India has been concentrating on, uh, and the capability to be able to participate and take forward each of these stacks. I think it is very, very important. At one point of time, if you looked at it, where we're very good at the applications part, let's move a little bit away or before the AI ecosystem. You were very good in application, but when it came to compute and all, you were not there. But today, the focus of the government has been really to pump up on all the sectors. So parallelly, many things are going. You had shown in your graphics also. When it comes to application today, we already have a lot of focused, areas on which how do we take the gains and possibilities and the optimization via AI ecosystem forward, whether it's health, whether it's education, agriculture, defense, in all of this, we have a roadmap, and slowly and steadily we are having an ecosystem where right from the startups to the big guys in the tech
Yes.
sector, everyone is participating. You move to the models, there were some kind of consternation about or the American big tech. They are putting across models, or from a disruptive angle, the Chinese coming with DeepSeek and all, and whether we were left out and all. But if you look at the mature manner in which we try to carry everyone along, and now we are getting our own models in place with our data sets and stuff like that. You are
Yes.
already seeing Sarvam, the kind of work they have done in terms of translation and all on real-time basis. I think phenomenal. Bharat Gen is another very inspiring work that is happening. So over on the models front, we are going in a very mature and inclusive and capacity building manner, so that we are able to get the best outcome. When you
Indeed.
look at compute, Mark, you see the approach with which we are really going after getting the GPU ecosystem in place. First, of course, getting it from outside the country, because we still don't have it. But parallelly we are also running a program to see that the indigenous GPU ecosystem happen. But most important to note is that the 30,000 GPUs that we brought in here and then made it available to the researchers and the startups at a very subsidized cost.
Right.
I think that has been a big enabler. Now you come to the data centers, the music.
Right, Mr. Bhattacharjee, we have a paucity of time, so let me just move on to our next question. To what extent will AI accelerate India's GDP growth potential? Because at the end of the day, everything is measured, by the measuring rod of money.
No, definitely. I think the impact on the GDP is tremendous. Just coming to the data centers part, look at the budget in which we gave tax holiday till 2047 to entities setting up their facilities here. So whether you look at the data centers, the cloud infra, the capability to take your compute ecosystem further, that's definitely going to add to your GDP, because it is going to optimize your performance in all sectors of the economy. So the impact on GDP will be there, and that recognition, Mark, is already being seen globally.
We'll leave this story for the moment, but do stay with us, Mr. Bhattacharjee, for our next story as well. The European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde, she delivered a stark warning. The deep economic ties that once stabilized the global system are now exposing nations to new vulnerabilities. Her message was clear: the world must rethink how to balance security with openness if trade and cooperation are to remain engines of prosperity. At the Munich Security Conference, Christine Lagarde, president of the European Central Bank, spoke about how the world economy is changing. For decades, countries became more connected through trade. This interdependence was seen as a strength. If one country struggled, others could help stabilize the system. But today, the same interdependence is turning into a vulnerability. Global shocks like the pandemic or deliberate actions like using supply chains as political weapons have shown that being too dependent on others can be risky. Christine Lagarde said that their analysis suggested a sudden 50% drop in supply from geopolitically distant suppliers would reduce manufacturing value added by 2 to 3%, with the impact concentrated in electrical equipment, chemicals, and electronics. Lagarde warns that geo-economic fragmentation, nations retreating into smaller blocks with only trusted partners, may feel safer but carries costs. It risks raising prices, slowing innovation, and fueling inflation that challenges central banks. At Davos, she noted the global order is shifting, though not breaking apart.
I think we should be talking about alternatives. We should be identifying much more so than we have probably in the past, the weaknesses, the sore points, the dependencies, the autonomy. But obviously, I take the view that from an economic and from a business point of view, we depend on each other. We have these very strong links and bind.
In simple terms, what once kept the global economy stable, our deep connections, now exposes us to new risks. And if nations retreat into fragmented systems, the world could face slower growth, higher prices, and more uncertainty. Her message is clear. We need to rethink how to balance security with openness, so that trade and cooperation continue to drive prosperity without leaving us exposed to dangerous shocks. The Economic Brief, DD India. So, Mr. Subhimar Bhattacharjee continues to be with us. Fragmentation is an issue, Mr. Bhattacharjee. We can see that, NATO provides a framework for military unity in Europe to a large extent, and the EU also shows some economic resilience. But Lagarde is talking, about diversifying supply chains, balancing security with openness. How is this even possible?
I think, Mark, her wisdom and her experience, now at the ECB and earlier at the IMF, and she has been long enough to see the global trade and the balance of, economic interests and the whole dynamics very closely. So now with the current round of disruptions, maybe partially due to the geopolitics and of course a lot of the uncertainty that comes from the US side. Of course, the Europeans are the most impacted, and it seems that the troubles on the geopolitics front is not going away. Even today, you see the tensions around US and Iran coming up even further. So I think all of this is creating a kind of a scenario where, of course, trust and resilience is also being challenged, and that is where you are trying to think of finding your own supply chain ecosystems. We are talking so much nowadays about critical minerals and rare earths, and also even on that you are seeing that geopolitics is determining the whole economics around that. And then, of course, you also try to see that how much of those close quarters you will create and, at the end of the day, kill globalization almost completely. I think the retreat from globalization that's been witnessed, and particularly very stark naked, where the US and the EU and the EU bloc countries today stand, I think creates a lot of tensions. And that is where finding the right balance, trying to again revamp the economic order that was there, before Trump 2.0, and all the concomitant activities that are erupting from defense and security perspective. It's a very dynamic and a fluidic situation which will have to be very closely monitored. So that is where I think the watch has to be to see how best and how effectively you optimize the situation, wait and watch, try and bring your trusted networks, but at the same time don't kill the globalization, because I think the world has definitely benefited with this kind of cooperation, at least from the Second World War till today, that despite troubles everywhere here and there, but there has been a certain sense of stability which has allowed trade and business and economics to grow. So I think these disruptions that are being felt, observed and all, they need to be closely watched and then the steps taken.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Subbimal Bhattacharjee. Thank you for joining us and unpacking these stories for us. And moving on to our next story, Tariq Rahman has been sworn in as Bangladesh's new Prime Minister, stepping into office with an economy under strain and citizens demanding urgent change. Inflation is climbing, corruption remains a top concern, and youngsters are calling for jobs in a country where nearly 40% of the population is under 30. Anu Kaushik has our next report.
Tariq Rahman took oath as Bangladesh Prime Minister on Tuesday, and he already has his task cut out. The new government's top priorities include addressing economic issues.
In an opinion poll conducted ahead of the elections, voters listed corruption, rise in prices, and economic development as their main concerns.
In our country, we have plenty of educational institutions, but not enough workplaces. I want the new government to address the challenges in the job market.
I've been working since I was very young, but the rise in prices for daily essentials has been drastic. Before you could buy fish, meat and other necessities with 1,000 taka. Now even 10,000 taka isn't enough to cover a month's groceries.
The International Monetary Fund lowered the GDP growth rate projection for Bangladesh to 4.9% for the year 2025 to 2026. According to official data, inflation rose to 8.58% in January 2026. The garment sector is the economy's backbone, with ready-made garments accounting for 80% exports and 10% of the GDP. Factory owners are hoping for a rebound in exports after the US lowered tariffs on Bangladeshi imports to 19% from the earlier 37%. In its poll manifesto, Rahman's party, the BNP, promised several economic initiatives, including introducing international payment systems, establishing regional e-commerce hubs, boosting Make in Bangladesh, and launching a family card for low-income families with monthly provisions to buy essential goods.
Around 40% of Bangladeshi population is under 30. The new government has an uphill task of creating jobs for millions of youth. In its poll manifesto, BNP promised creation of 1 million new jobs in the information and communication technology sector. With camera person Radhe Krishna, this is Anu Kaushik reporting for the Economic Brief, DD India.
Well, the US has ramped up military pressure on Iran. A full-scale war can be disastrous. It can have a disastrous impact on the world economy as well, especially on aviation and oil industries. We leave you with this report. Thank you for watching the Economic Brief. Namaskar.
US-Iran tensions have escalated, with Washington sending naval and air assets to West Asia. This comes as nuclear talks between the US and Iran fail to reach a breakthrough. A conflict will have consequential impacts on the global economy. Oil prices have already begun rising. Iran is a major oil producer, along with other West Asian nations, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iraq, Oman and Kuwait. Markets are concerned not just over Iranian oil supply, but also regional oil flows, given the risk of disruption to shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. Approximately 35% of the world's seaborne oil and 20% of its liquefied natural gas transit through this narrow waterway. All this could further increase the oil prices. Disruption in transit will force ships to take longer routes, thereby increasing freight charges, which would in turn raise the cost of imported goods. Conflict will also lead to airspace closure, forcing airlines to reroute flights, resulting in higher airfares. Tourism in West Asia will take a hit over security concerns. Investor demand for safety will drive up gold prices. A long-term conflict will drive central banks to adjust rates in a bid to control inflation. The Economic Brief, DD India.